Hello, huddlers! Welcome to the California Department of Fish and Wildlife's Recruit, Retain, Reactivate, Harvest Huddle Hour, R3H3. In this episode, we're going to discuss
an introduction to small game hunting, where we'll touch on hunting rabbits and varying hare, small game hunting with kids, and an introduction to falconry.
These R3H3 recordings are a resource designed by CDFW and the R3 team to bring more Californians to hunting, fishing, foraging, shooting sports, and just getting outdoors. They're meant for a beginner audience or those looking to gain knowledge around a new skill. If at any time you have questions, comments, concerns, or even an idea for an upcoming huddle, just reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. Our email address is r3statewideprogram@wildlife.ca.gov. And now for our presentation
on an introduction to small game hunting. Starting our discussion, we'll talk with Ben Lewis, a CDFW upland game biologist.
I run the special hunts program and then any of the upland game projects that go on in Central Region.
Ben is also an avid hunter.
Small game, upland game. Used to do a little bit of big game hunting, when I first started with the department and as a kid, but kind of focused mainly on what I work in, and which is upland game birds.
When it comes to small game hunting, Ben and others say one of the biggest draws is opportunity and rate of success.
So success is high, locations are easier to access, right? There's more of them. So it's a good place to get started, and it's a good place to transition to if you haven't done it. Plus, it's a lot of fun.
Ben also points out that small game hunting is a great first step for hunters who have just completed Hunter's Ed and got their license, or upland game hunters looking to try something new.
Pretty much from your hunting license, the next steps are, do I have the equipment, right? And do I have a location to go hunt? And the equipment, if you're doing any kind of upland hunting, you usually already have a shotgun of some kind, right? It doesn't really, with rabbit hunting, it doesn't really matter if it's a single shot or a pump action, or you can have pretty much the gambit of shotguns to use, right? And ammunition is very similar to upland hunting, right? You could pretty much use your usually want to go a little heavier than the dove load, but if that's what you have, you can use that and be successful. So and then location wise, like I said, wherever you are, you can do a little research in time, and I guarantee you'll find a location that's not 100 miles away to go and hunt.
And as far as rules and regulations go, Ben says there is some similarities and overlap between small game and upland game.
It's included with the upland stamp, right? So upland stamp includes the upland, our small game mammals, right? Like the hares, rabbits, tree squirrel, right? So there's no additional other than your license and what you'd have for the upland that you would need for rabbits.
With Ben's time spent small game hunting within California, he had these tips for hunters looking for places to successfully harvest rabbits, hares, and even squirrels.
Most of what we did was in the Central Valley, so lots of areas near ag fields. You get permission from like the irrigation district, or lots of dairy farms or dairy farmers. And then just the occasional spot of random mixed public property. Like the aqueduct was a big part of what we did. Along the aqueduct, there's little pockets of public land, even department-owned land that's open and accessible to hunting. And then some big irrigation district properties that abut it, and flood control district, right? And they're open to hunting, and you can get permission from the private stuff, and then the public stuff is just open to hunting. So we'd go usually every year around the 4th of July when the season opens. We'd go out and we'd do a big rabbit hunt with the family, and we'd have a big rabbit fry for the 4th of July. That and frog legs, right? We go gigging frogs and hunt rabbit.
Another positive with small game hunting, it doesn't require a heavy investment in equipment up front.
Especially the time of year that it's open for rabbit season, you're not going to need like your heavy winter coats or things like that. The most important thing you need is your like I said, your shotgun and a good set of boots, right?
Okay.
You put the miles on, but other than that, I mean, the weather's warm. You're usually out earlier in the mornings or later in the evenings when the activity's high, and it's the best time to be out during that time of year anyway.
Ben's most important tip for small game hunting?
Just want to reiterate that it doesn't take a lot to get started, and it is really a lot of fun, right? When you're out there, especially if you go out there with some friends and you're out walking through a field hunting rabbits, right? It's when they're moving or you get a rabbit up, there's ton of exhilaration, ton of excitement, and it's easy to be successful, right? I mean, it's a good place to get started, no matter where you are, right? If you started with big game, if you want to transition to something, try something new, I definitely recommend that.
And with that, thanks for the talk, Ben. From Ben, we move to Robert Eddings, a small game hunter and program manager with the California Waterfowl Association at the Grizzly Island Wildlife Area in Sassoon Marsh.
I'm the regional manager for California Waterfowl Association, working primarily on wetland and upland habitat enhancement projects.
Robert is going to share some small game hunting tips for adults and ways to introduce youth to the activity as well.
Grizzly Island Wildlife Area offers small game hunting primarily in the month of July and then concurrent with waterfowl season later in the year, primarily for rabbits, cottontails, and jackrabbits. There's a lot of them out here.
Like Ben, Robert agrees. Small game hunting is great for new hunters or even those looking to work on perfecting skills.
Small game hunting is good for beginning hunters because it's relatively low key. There's usually plenty of animals, plenty of opportunities to practice your stalking, the process of getting down, taking a safe shot, evaluating. They're not as spooky as big game or birds that get up and fly away instantly. You have more time and more opportunity to practice, to go through the motions, whether you're successful or not. You have more times to try.
Another reason small game are a good place to start, no need for that expensive gear.
You can wear anything you want. They don't flare or get spooked from bright clothing. You don't need camo clothing. You just need something comfortable that you can avoid stickers, because you're in the wildlife habitat. There's stickers all over the place. So no shorts, no sandals, basic jeans and shoes, and walk down the levee and take it easy. You need a gun, a hunting license, and that's about it.
When deciding where to hunt small game like cottontails or other rabbits, Robert says to think brush and water sources.
Wild roses and berries, some coyote brush, quail brush. Up in the hills, the foothills, you have chamise and poison oak, and just any kind of low brush that's thick with some sort of food source, usually around creeks, ponds, some sort of water source. When I grew up hunting down in Monterey County at Fort Hunter Liggett, there we would walk along creek beds and around ponds in little brushy patches, and that's where we hunted most of our rabbits down there. So thick cover next to some water, and they dart in and out of the cover, but it's got to be not so thick that you can't get in after them. So you want that kind of blend where little patches that you can hunt amongst, and they're usually full of rabbits. Most public lands have some species of rabbit. Rabbits are generally lower elevation, up in the mountains and the Sierras. When you get up in the pines, there's not as many rabbits. Lower elevation, oaks, open rolling oaks and brush patches. They're lower elevation species. So I think a lot of state wildlife areas offer rabbit hunting. Any lower elevation BLM, national forest, or even some federal-owned land along the rivers. I believe those all, or most of them, allow rabbit hunting.
Robert says all of these components make small game hunting a great introduction for youth.
Yeah, it's a great way to start. My first hunt was a rabbit hunt. My first animal was a cottontail when I was 9 years old. I've taken my kids. I think my kids' first hunt were bird hunts, because that's more. I do more of that than anything in my job and things. I think it was bird hunting. But from like my older son's first hunt was a waterfowl hunt. I'm a waterfowl biologist, so that's what I do. But the amount of gear and the time and getting up early and the work and hitting a moving target while hiding and then jumping up, there's a lot of moving parts there to do, and it is hard to get involved. And unless you have somebody to have all that gear, or you grow up in a family, it's harder to get started. Anybody can do this, and it's very easy. I've taken my kids to do everything that I do: goose hunting, duck hunting, quail hunting, dove hunting, deer, rabbits, squirrels. They were unsuccessful at squirrels, but we went once. So they've done everything that I do. So but I've done a little bit of all with them to kind of introduce them to it.
A reason why Robert likes small game hunting for youth is its ability to learn and teach more as you go.
You see a rabbit here, it doesn't happen. The kid screws something up or doesn't do this right or whatever. You talk and you walk 100 yards and there's another one. And it's usually, not always, it's hunting still. There's usually more opportunities in front of you can teach at each moment. And that's not always the case in the other hunting, other species hunting. Or it happens so fast and there's things, it's hard to do that. Squirrel hunting, done gray squirrel hunting up further up in the mountains. That's a little harder to start because there's the opportunities a little bit less and they're much more challenging targets. Running along the ground, running up in trees, jumping around. It's safety issue, same thing. If a squirrel's up in a tree, what kind of shot you can and cannot take. So there's ample squirrel hunting opportunity in the mountains as well, but that's a little more challenging game just because of their habits and their habitat. Taken both my boys squirrel hunting, I think twice, and neither one of them has been successful yet. They're just too slow to get on them as they're running around. They're just where rabbits can just sit there for a while, give you an opportunity. So it's a little low key, a little slower pace learning opportunity.
Final tip from Robert has to do with what you do after you've successfully hunted your rabbit and need to get home.
Yeah, they're very easy to carry out. They're very light. You do need to be aware of some places where they have a lot of fleas and ticks on them. You don't want to be like just holding onto it or having it rub against you. So there are some things to pay attention to you don't have to worry about with birds. There you will see a few parasites every now and then. I've had some with botworms and things on them. I mean, there's a few things to pay attention to there. None of it's really life-threatening to human. It's kind of gross sometimes. But it's important to keep them cool. Get them cooled down, get them gutted. If you're out walking around a long ways, field dress them, keep them cool. They do smell, they do stink a little bit, and that's just the nature of it. Cleaning them is pretty simple. There's plenty of YouTube. I mean, I could demonstrate it with my hands approximately, but cottontails and some other smaller species of rabbits, very soft skin, very easy to clean. You pretty much make a couple cuts and just kind of pull the skin off. Pretty easy.
Thanks, Robert. And for our final aspect of small game hunting, we'll discuss falconry. And for that, we turn to CDFW's Melanie Hutter.
I'm a program tech 2 at Licensed Revenue Branch with Fish and Wildlife. And we process pretty much all of the licenses and permits that you'll have in California to work with wildlife or to fish or to hunt.
Melanie works to educate people on what falconry is and the steps it takes to being able to do it as a form of hunting.
Falconry is actually, I was really happy to learn about it once I got this job because it's fascinating. So falconry is probably one of the oldest tradition and sports known today because we know that it goes back older than the first writings about it, which are about 3,000 years old. And at that time when they're writing about it, it's already a long established tradition that would have taken a long time to develop. So we know it's older than that. And it has been common in almost every ancient civilization all over the world, like throughout Asia, the Arab world, and then it was brought over to the States. But you'll see it associated with royalty too. Like if you look, like a lot of the old, like from the medieval times, you might see the king and he's got, the falcon on his arm, and even going back to ancient Egyptian pictures too, you'll see it there.
Part of Melanie's job at CDFW is being one of the people the public can reach out to with questions on falconry and how to get licensed. The most common question she gets?
The most common question is about how to get started.
And her most common answer is?
First, you study and pass the California falconry examination. And that's a federally certified examination that everyone in the United States who wants to become a falconer has to take that exam. So you take that exam, and then your next step is to become an apprentice falconer. And you have to do that for at least 2 years, and you need a mentor, or we call it a sponsor. So that's somebody who's experienced at least 5 years. And they have to hands-on training, teach you how to, because they have to work with these birds. They take birds out of the wild. So they go and they trap their bird and start hunting with it.
Melanie says finding a mentor to invest time in training a new falconer is likely the toughest step to starting. but there are ways to go about it.
That can be a little difficult because it is something that another person's committing to you as a beginner. You know, they want to make sure you're serious about it because it's a time investment, and 2 years, 2 years is a long time to work with somebody. But what I recommend is there is the California Hawking Club is a big organization in the state that, is all about falconry, and they do offer some assistance with finding a sponsor.
And as far as if falconry has a specific season and when it is,
falconers are bound to the same seasons as any other hunter when it comes to the game they want to take, although they are allowed extra time. So that's something interesting about falconry is this season does get extended, I know, for upland game birds and some small game. But other than that, the falconry can happen in pretty much around the clock all year.
So to recap what we've learned so far,
first, you will study and then pass the falconry examination. And you will do that at a regional office. So once you're ready to take the test, you will reach out to one of the regional offices, hopefully the one closest to you, and try to set an appointment to take the exam. Once that is passed, then you're ready to apply. At that time, you will need a sponsor, and you will fill out the application, the falconry application available through our website. And on there should have your test information. There's a place for your sponsor to sign and certify that they're going to be with you for 2 years. And then you apply. And then the next step, because you have to build your bird enclosure where you're going to keep these birds, and it's very specific, the kind of housing they need. So the next step after that is that you're going to have a warden come out, will inspect your facility. Once they sign off on it, you are then considered a licensed falconer. Your license will be issued, and you're free to go try to get your first bird. Apprentices are limited to 2 different species. They can take a red-tailed hawk or an American kestrel, and that's for the first 2 years. And then once they get advanced to a general level falconer, that opens up almost any kind of raptor that they might want to have, native species, and then also including exotic species. And that's where some of my interesting questions come in when they talk about what kind of birds they want to fly someday or now. So in that when they bring up eagles, that's always interesting. And an eagle would be allowed only for a master falconer, and they have to get additional certification on top of their 7 years experience as a master falconer.
Wait a minute, Melanie. Tell us about these interesting questions related to species.
I've had a few people ask about an exotic bird that's called a harpy eagle. And they're native not to here. I believe they might be in South America or some parts of Asia, but they're probably, I don't know, this big off the ground and have a wingspan of over 6 feet, and they eat sloths and monkeys. So it hasn't ever been approved or anyone actually try to import one, but I have to wonder, like, what would you have it hunt here? I don't know that would happen, but that's probably the craziest one that has been brought forth a couple of times. So I'd be curious to see if anyone can make it happen, but I kind of doubt it.
Wow. That is a gnarly looking species. Well, with that, Melanie's final tip is on where to find more information on falconry in California.
There's a lot more information available at the California Department of Fish and Wildlife website. If you get there and you search for falconry, you'll see a lot of what I've talked about here. There's a document that's about getting started, the requirements to become a falconer. Kind of goes over everything I've talked about here. It has a list of the regional offices, their contact information in case you wanted to reach out for examination.
All right, that does it for this Recruit, Retain, Reactivate, Harvest Huddle Hour. If you have questions for any of our presenters, for the R3 team, or for me, feel free to email us. Again, our email address is r3statewideprogram@wildlife.ca.gov. Feel free to also use that email if you have an idea for an upcoming huddle, or if you want to share with us your favorite outdoor photos for our R3 Photo of the Month. Speaking of,
thanks to Wayne and his father William from San Francisco with their photo on a recent hunt in San Diego County. Thank you both for sharing your photos and for sharing the joy of hunting.
until our next huddle, tight lines and straight shooting, thanks for being here.